Saab, who attended a meeting with the Secretary of the USA last weekend. Washington area, he also came back with one thought that it's very important that we know who is who. Not only active. My struggle is even active members do not know who is who. And if I may ask in the next 5 seconds, that we have a person here who comes here not very often, but few times. And do we know who he is? Not many people know. A gentleman with a handkerchief as a cap on his head. His name is Sheikh Lateef Saab. His daughter is married to Khalid Khadak Saab. He lives in Ellicott City, Maryland. And my interaction or my knowing him goes back to, I was just thinking, 38 years. It was summer of 1981. I spent that summer with my late friend Sees Chaudhary, who used to own a restaurant called Margala Restaurant in F6 Markaz, Islamabad. So I stayed with him for a couple of months in that summer. And Sheikh Saab's wife and see her brother and sister. So he was at Chashma Miraj or wherever, Islamabad, close to Islamabad. He was a very suited, booted gentleman, top-notch officer, very secretive because he had some secret which we did not know. And later on we know that he is involved in that Gupta or whatever project. And on the weekends, which was Thursday or Saturday, I don't remember, he used to drive his white Toyota Corona car with his wife and 3 children, one of them is now mother of 2 also, 2 children of Khalid Khadak. So I have very vivid memories of those 1981 summer in Islamabad. And we used to eat in that lavish restaurant outside in the lawn in the summers of nice, beautiful summers of Islamabad in those days. And then Sheikh Saab migrated to USA also, and I happened to went to Washington in '94. So I was very close to him. He used to invite me a lot to his home for dinner, and I always called his wife as Abba. And life goes on. But he has very nice stories, and I'm sure his story will not be finished in 15 minutes. So I'm already asking him to go slow and come back tomorrow again, and day after if need be. Because this is history of Pakistan and history of Jamaat in a way too, because there are a lot of objections going on here and there. So let's hear him first time, what he knows about that. And Nasir Saab may have a lot of questions because he always go to that surah where atom bomb is mentioned in the Quran. So let's see what Sheikh Saab keeps out.
Thank you very much, Bajwa sir. And Assalamu alaikum, Mahathir Wazran. As Bajwa sir mentioned, my name is Lateef, and I was in Pakistan Atomic Energy Commission and served as a scientist for 30 to 35 years. As you know, Pakistan is a new country and there were a lot of things that our seniors has to do. So the atomic energy was one of the things. The things goes that Professor Abdul Salam was the chief scientific advisor to the President of Pakistan, which was Field Marshal Muhammad Ayub Khan. And he was 26 years old scientist, came to Pakistan in 1946 after doing his PhD in physics and mathematics. While he came to Pakistan, he was given the job of a professor in the government college as well as University of Punjab. As you know, people are very, very jealous of MDs having higher education and having a great name in the universe, because he did his PhD in physics in 3 years But in mathematics, instead of doing PhD in 3 years, he did in 9 months. His professor was really very much amazed to see his capabilities and capacities to do such things. So when he came to Pakistan, in government college, Professor Saraj was the principal. He was very much against the Jamaat Ahmadiyya. So he put him not as a professor, as a coach of football team. And he was told to coach the football team. He said, I do not know anything about the football. But he said, no, you have to do this. So he was so disheartened that he left the country, went back to Cambridge, where he was a student. So later on, he became a professor of physics in the Imperial College of Science. And then he was appointed by the, and his appointment was very interesting. Field Marshal Ayub was going to America, and Chief Scientific Advisor to the President of United States, he knew him. So when the delegate went there, Ghulam Ishaq Khan was chairman of WAPDA, and when the chief scientific advisor to the President of United States saw the list of people coming to United States, he said, who would discuss with me you want to give them aid in waterlogging and salinity? Because that was a great problem in those days with Pakistan. Because you know there are a lot of canals, and these canals were built by the British government. But in those days, they did not realize that there is a seepage of water, and the canals were about 30 miles, 40 miles away, and the rivers were also there. So the seepage created the water table very high, and the things were not working very well. There was a salinity, waterlogging, and he told the President of the United States that there should be somebody who should understand my language, his scientific advisor language, and should discuss with me, and then we should discuss the aid program for the government of Pakistan. So this message was conveyed to Field Marshal. Then Field Marshal immediately called his ambassador in England and asked him to tell Professor that we are reaching America, so and so, and he should be there joining, and I appoint him as a chief scientific advisor to the President of Pakistan. Anyway, Professor went there, and the chief scientific advisor told the professor the background, how I called you here, and I know you, your knowledge. So your main problem, which we have studied in the United States, that's a waterlogging and salinity. And your delegation does not have anybody who knows about this, and you may have studied something while you came to know that you are coming to the United States to join the entourage. So he said, yes, I did study something, but I know being a agriculturist, because the background of the Professor Salam was that his father was an educationist, but he had a small land, and they used to have plow that with the mazaras and other people. So when he did MSc here in Pakistan, he was selected as civil servant. So he went to Delhi to join. Before joining, he went to Josepullah Khan Sahib just to say hello to him and get some advice. And Josepullah Khan Sahib, you are such a brilliant student, and you are joining this civil service. What you will become? Deputy Commissioner, Commissioner, and then the Secretary to the government, and you will retire. You are not going to give any service to this country. We need intellectual people, scientist people like you to guide this nation, don't go and join. So Professor, having advice from Choice Zulfullah Khan Sahab, in those days there was only telegrams, there were no cell phones, nothing to means of communications for very poor. He sent a telegram to his father that I have met Chaudhry Sahab and he had advised me this thing and I am coming back. And I have to contact Cambridge University because I had applied them before and they did reply me, but more or less I had refused coming because you don't have money. So in those days, Second World War stopped and they had some money for the agriculturists. So the chairman of that committee, he knew Professor Salam because he stood first in the University of Punjab. And he came to know that he was going to civil service and he was advised by Zulfullah Khan not to go to the civil service but go for higher studies. And he called Judge Zulfullah Khan Sahib, told them that I have 2 scholarships for the agriculturists. And luckily Professor Salam falls under that. So that in those days, these ships were going to England mostly every 15 days. Either they will take passengers, if there were many passengers, or cows for the meat for English people. So Professor Sahab came to know that one ship is leaving in 15 days, but it is taking cows to England. So he immediately took the train and went to Bombay and met the shipping people. They say, we are taking the animals, or we can accommodate you in this. He said, I would go whether you put me in the deck or with the animals or with anything, because I have to join the University of Cambridge. So he went with the animals. He traveled 15 days with the animals. And there was another gentleman, his name was Minai. He became the governor of State Bank of Pakistan. He was also going. So both of these students traveled 15 days with the animals. So they went there. So after doing his PhD in physics and mathematics, when I told you came to Pakistan, he has this passion that my generation and the new generation, they should have read science, technology, and but he did not have in mind the Atomic Energy Commission. So after a few months, he became Secretary to the United Nations in Science and Technology. He went to Vienna, which is a headquarter of International Atomic Energy Commission. And Dr. Usmani, I.H. Usmani, Itrat Sen Usmani, he was the chairman of Atomic Energy Commission. Rather than by traveling by taxi or some subway, they sat on a train in Vienna. So when they were traveling, they saw a reactor. When they saw a reactor, Professor Salam said to Usmani, should not we have a reactor in Pakistan? Because our population is growing, we are 6.5 crore in West Pakistan, 7.5 crore in East Pakistan, and population is increasing. So while sitting in the train, they said, let us approach, but we don't have money. But they had in mind that Canadians, they had developed reactor in those days, which is called Canam. And so they approached the Canadians, if do you give us a loan? And they said, do you have a manpower? They said, no, we don't have manpower. You have to train the manpower. They said, we have to give you reactor, we have to train your manpower, we have to install the reactor. So it is a 5 to 6 year project. What you would do in 6 year project? And they said that this is our first reactor, CANDU type Canadian deuterium and uranium reactor. And we have not sold this reactor in the world. Suppose this reactor fails, we have technology to rectify the defects, but you won't be having this. We contract on a turnkey basis and a 5-year contract for the maintenance of the reactors. See, but you have to convince our aid-giving agency that you really need a reactor and you will be able to run the reactor and all these things. So, in 1965, there was a war, and India and Pakistan for 17 days. Field Marshal, in the meantime, the things go very fast sometimes. In the meantime, Field Marshal Ayub Khan called a meeting of scientists and engineers and the journals in Lahore Governor House and told them that we have very difficulty in saving the country. Now we have to do something for future to save the country. Professor, being 26-year-old, stood up and he loved to speak Punjabi and especially Jangi. He stood up and he said, Field Marshal Sahab, agar Karad da goa dharna je na, te bomb banana paise gaye. Karad Punjabi mein Hindu ko kehte hain. So Field Marshal Sahab said, okay, go ahead, young gentleman. So professor went out of the room and he wrote a note, got signature of Field Marshal and gave to Finance Minister. And in those days, the Finance Minister was Schwab. He was an American agent, as a matter of fact. Now I'm saying, but it proves later on. When Professor gave him the signed copy of Field Marshal, he was annoyed. You people, you live in England and you are developing science here and we don't have trained manpower, we don't have knowledge. He said, we have discussed these things, we will train the people. They will install the reactor on turnkey basis and they have a contract with us for 5-year maintenance. And we, in the meantime, we would send our scientist engineer who are MSc and they would learn, they would do PhDs, they would get training, they would have all the exposure. But Schwab threw the paper on his face. He said, get out of my room. He was so rude. Professor came out and told all this story to Field Marshal. Field Marshal said, I cannot do anything. He is an agent. These are the words of Field Marshal. He is an agent of American and I cannot do anything. Because we get money from them and all those things. And Field Marshal was even the first president who came to America. Anyway, so when Professor and Dr. Osmani, they determined that they are going to have a reactor. So when they came to reactor, uranium, which is a fuel for the reactors, is not purchasable or obtainable from any country because nobody gives that. And in those days, 40, 50, 45 years ago, it was very rare. Professor Salam being Secretary of Science and Technology, and Pakistan being starved in energy, gas and oil, he managed with the United Nations to explore oil and gas in Pakistan. One day, a plane was flying they had some equipment and one Geiger counter. Geiger counter is an instrument which detects radioactive material, and mostly the radioactive material is uranium. They were flying over Dera Ghazi Khan and the Geiger counter triggered. And that group who was sitting in the aeroplane, they say, it seems to be a uranium or something, nuclear metal. Thorium can be, uranium can be. They came back, and in those days, as I told you earlier, there was a fax, telegrams, or if you book a call, it takes 2 to 3 hours, you could talk somebody. They talked to professor in Cambridge and told him that our Geiger counter triggered, rather detecting gas and oil, we feel there is a nuclear material. Professor talked to Dr. Usmani. Usmani sent many scientists, those who were available. They brought sand from Dera Ghazi Khan. And they had a little knowledge. They bleached that sand. And bleaching is done with a special kerosene oil. And they found that is a very low kind of uranium in the sand. He said, well, this uranium is not purchasable. You better go ahead, do whatever you can do, and bleach this and see how much uranium is in this. Because we are going to have a reactor and we need uranium for the fuel. Because in those days, technology was only making fuel from the uranium. Now, when they burn the uranium, another element which is called the plutonium, that is a man-made, and you can make another fuel and high breeder reactors with that plutonium. So, Dr. Usmani, he said, let us, in Lahore was only the place where we were hiring the people, and that was a sort of a umbrella for the scientists to get training, to know something about atomic energy, and then something, go ahead and do something. So they eventually thought that we should make a pilot plant in Lahore and see how much uranium we can extract out of the DG Khan sand. So they started this plant, small plant, and when they bleach that and then they recover the uranium, that is called the yellow cake, because it is yellow in color. Hexafluoride, that is technically called, but common language called yellow cake. So they conveyed that we have converted that the yellow cake, but quality is very poor. They said, don't worry about that. You go ahead, quality, don't we, because it's not available anywhere in the market, we will do that. So they started this pilot plant, and then because the sand was found in Dera Ghazi Khan, they built a lot of mills there, 15 to 20 mills, and they would bleach tons and tons of sand and recover the yellow cake. So they were very happy that now they have passed the one step of nuclear technology, because there are many steps. Right. Okay, thank you very much.